So, okay. So once
Exactly.
the budget is in place, the real world never follows plan perfectly. When actual numbers are different from the budget, what should an owner look for so they can tell the difference between a normal movement and a real warning sign?
Okay, that's really important. That's part of variance. A budget will tell you what should happen,
Mhm.
and the variance tells you when it doesn't and why. So it's important to understand that variance analysis is not about blame. Okay. It's not like anybody failed. It's about understanding performance, identifying problems early, and then being
Right.
able to make your course correction quickly. It's important that variance analysis takes place every month, like clockwork for a reason. For variance analysis, we look at what changed, why did it change, is it temporary or is it permanent,
Right.
and what action based on that we need to take. So in summary, the
Yeah.
variance
Well, that,
analysis
that
is
makes
guiding
sense.
your next
Again,
steps.
I always looked at it, as you said, kind of helps see what's going. Cause I always talk about people look at data, but they don't go back and they look, a couple months back, and projecting forward. So if, a piece of data at one time is just one piece of data at one time, it's not a trend. And again, variance, I always looked at variance to me, my simple uh, look at it is that life happens and sometimes things happen here or there, right? And if you have a budget and the variance and you have that wiggle room of that 2%, 3%, whatever that is, it's just kind of like when you do polls, it's a margin of error. Then you're still moving in a pretty steady direction. But if you get a variance of 10, 15, something drastic, then you need to figure out why. And again, if you had a hurricane and everything happened, that's easy. But if you didn't have that, what did occur? And I think what you show on the financial side is how to help people actually get to that understanding. Yeah. So I think, and that's sometimes what's hard because
For
people want
sure.
to, they,
For sure.
especially when you're new, they tend to jump at whatever, good or bad, they jump on it. And it's like, don't jump. Take in the information and let's take it for a second.
Exactly. It's a good
So
choice of
that
words.
leads
Don't
to
jump.
a pressure question because it's one thing to review the numbers when things are calm, like we said. It's another thing to use the budget when something unexpected happens, kind of like we were just saying. So here's the next question. So how does a good budget help an owner make calmer decisions when something unexpected happens, such as slower sales, higher cost, a staffing problem, equipment failure, rough month, kind of pick whatever that it is. How does that, how does having the budget help them with this? Hmm.
Well, I think a good budget kind of acts like a home base, okay, for the business owner, okay? If the sales draw, he can look at the plan and he can decide, does he want to cut some spending? Does he have, some reserves, 3 or 4 month cash reserves set aside, which we talk about a
Hmm.
lot? Can he use some of that just to get through this slug period? If his expenses are higher, maybe he'll decide to delay some non-essential purchases and push some other things off just to get him through this short, period of having high expenses. If he loses an employee or his labor costs go up, he can decide based on the budget whether he can afford to hire a temp. Or maybe he would rather go with overtime with existing staff. But in any case, he's not guessing, okay? He has what to go to, what to look to make decisions and what his options are because he has the budget in place. So in general, a budget just reduces uncertainty and
Right.
smart.
In EMS and military, we talked about having your lizard brain. It's a vegetative function. It's breathing and everything. You don't want your business decisions being made by the lizard brain. Lizard brain's all about I got to breathe, I got to do this, and you don't care about anything else. One of the things that we always learned was take a deep breath and exhale, and just let the get the panic off of you. It's okay to have the anxiety, but get the panic off so you can just relax. And I think the budget and as you were talking about, and the variances in the budget, those are the tools that help you. Okay, take a deep breath. And again, as we were saying, if it's a couple, If it's 1 or 2 points, it's not a big deal. If it's something else, again, it's a tool, and I think people beat themselves up because they think I have to say, but I have to do it, and I don't have to say it, but they just become so stringent and dogmatic that they put extra pressure on themselves, and that's not the time when you want the extra pressure on yourself. You want to be able to take the breath and feel. So I think, the budget and the variance actually help with that. Of course, that's just me. I'm the dumb operational guy. I'm not the financial person. So, but that's how it always works for me. And I found that worked whether I was in EMS or military, taking a deep breath. Okay, now what have you got? It's a lot easier to deal with when you have that calm moment.
Right. Well, I just thought of a military example here. If you jump out of a plane and you have a parachute, you're not paying. But if you jump in and you don't have a parachute on, as in no budget,
Yeah.
start to panic. The budget's a parachute.
So it's great. Okay. So for an owner
Very
who's
good.
listening and thinking, I understand why this matters, but I don't want to overcomplicate it. And, how can we make how can we make this complicated more practical? So let's look at that. So if an owner only had time for one monthly budget variance check-in, what are the few numbers or questions they should review so they know whether the business is still on track?
Okay. First of all, a monthly variance check-in should only be about a 30-minute task. Maybe 30 minutes, maybe 60 if you're a really bigger business. And that's just a small time, small part of the time that we spend, working and operating our businesses. The most useful part of the check-in is always sales versus budget. Do we get the revenue? Because I could tell you 9 tenths out of 10, the revenue is the most important number. Okay. The next thing is cash balance. Oh, can we cover the bills? Okay. The next thing, major expenses versus
Mhm.
budget. Or do we need to make some temporary cuts? And the last thing is everybody wants to know profit and loss versus budget. Did we actually make money this month? Okay, so there's 4 pieces of data. Then you could actually see that in a budget report probably in 15 minutes or less. But, there's really no excuse for not at least taking a look. Okay, a few final questions that an owner might also think to ask about his monthly review is what surprised us this month? What happened that we didn't expect? Okay, because it's like, oh, maybe we need to do something different there. What's the biggest risk coming up for the next month? So in advance, he's thinking, what variances might come up, next month? And where could we be proactive rather than reactive, and prepare in advance for something that might make a big impact in the coming month. So, I think a little bit of discipline here and a few answers really helps an owner have better visibility and
And
helps
as
him
you're
to stay
saying that,
more
it's funny because
proactive.
I tell people the same thing when I walk through operation stuff. You shouldn't spend hours on this. This should be 20, 30 minutes at the most, unless you find something really radical. But again, it's just checking in to see how you're doing and, reality versus what you plan to do. And I know, some businesses, they actually have variance based off seasons, right? I mean, so that's something that you can actually help them with. So, when I grew up in the Northeast, we didn't have ice cream sales during the winter. And it's not like Texas where you get it, 365. We didn't. So they closed down, right about Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and they didn't open up again until just before Easter. And so if you went, Baskin Robbins wasn't around, but you had Carvel, you had something else, you couldn't go get the ice cream. So that variance, that owner would have to address, okay, I'm doing very limited sales during that period. And I think sometimes people forget that even if you have a car washing business, again, it's going to have variance based on the season, based on for the weather, right? So understanding the variances are a natural part of this. It's not, I think when I first started, I get that sense of like, oh, variance, and I'm looking for something big, shiny, like, oh, and it could just be weather, something's going on in the world that made something slow or something fast. And not to take a variance it's not a personal attack at you. It's just part of being the cork in the water of business.
Right. Some variances are going to be, happening every month. Some variances you're going to know about, seasonal differences. And then there's always the ones that surprise us. But that's why, we plan in advance. Part of the plan is having, funds set aside to handle these kind of things. And it shouldn't be anything that's, too terribly shocking.
Oh, I appreciate it.
That,
So,
wrecks our whole
quick
plan.
question. So we're
So-
getting ready to, we've done our questions and we'll get ready to transition and to close the show. But so if you have a business owner who's watching right now and realizes they have never built a real budget or they have not been reviewing their actual numbers against the budget, what's the first practical step you'd recommend?
Well, in most cases, people need help. Okay. So I would say to connect with whoever is preparing your bookkeeping. If you're doing your own, connect with an accountant or CPA to, review those books. And either that or, you're a good YouTuber, go watch there's lots of good YouTube videos about building budgets. And if you can use Excel, you can build a budget. Okay. So you can do it yourself, but most business owners really shouldn't spend their time getting too much in the weeds. Yeah, monthly reviews don't take long, but the initial preparation can take time. And in the workshop coming up, I talk about a company who did
Oh,
it,
wow.
and they took their whole team off site for a
Yeah.
whole day. That was to build a budget. Okay, the whole team, the whole day. Okay, so it depends on, so the initial setup of the budget is not something you try to do in 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
would
getting help
behoove
isn't a
most
bad thing.
owners to get a little help.
Yeah. So,
No.
okay. So as we're
No,
getting ready to
not at
close
all.
this, any last words you want to tell everybody besides come see you? Because when they're afraid, you don't bite and you're nice and they can learn something from you.
Yeah, and I just want to say it's really not that far. I know myself personally, I'm always intimidated by something that's new. Something I haven't done before. It's intimidating, and then I procrastinate. Okay, those two go hand in hand. If you're like me at all, okay, you need a little bit of help just to get a push and a shove.
Good.
And
Well, I
once you
appreciate
get
it.
going,
So,
then you'll
Amanda,
be
this has
fine.
been really useful conversation. Again, I love that it takes us budgeting from the abstract to bring us back to decision making and something that can really help a business owner plot their business and move things ahead. So for me, the big takeaway is a budget helps an owner set a direction. The variance analysis helps them notice when business is drifting up, down, left, or right before actually the damage gets bigger and worse. So they catch it before it gets really bad. And that matters because most businesses do not get hurt only by one big event. They get worn down by little problems that keep going unnoticed for too long. That death by 1,000 cuts. And so if you're a business owner watching this, the practical step is simple. Don't create a budget and put it away. Build a monthly rhythm where you compare what you expect to happen with what actually happened. And that's where better decisions begin. And from my side, if those numbers are showing pressure points, thin cash, too much, delayed revenue, whatever it is, then between Amanda and myself, one of us can help you look at the weak spots and try to figure something out. And don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I need some help. So Amanda, I appreciate it. And if you want, go ahead and say your contact information. I'm also going to put that in the notes for the description for the show.
Sure. I can be reached by email at amanda@sensiblestrategiesllc.com. That's also our website URL, sensiblestrategiesllc.com with the V. You can find there, and there you can link to all kinds of things. There's also a flyer there for the upcoming workshop session 2, which is June 18th. That's what we're talking about. The subject that we're going to cover is pretty much, what I've just talked about here with Warren, but in a little more detail, some hands-on, raffles, networking, free lunch.
Yes. Well, you
plus
definitely made session 1 fun, so it ought to be good this time. All right. Well, everyone, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining in. Amanda, thank you. And we will see you guys later. Thank you. Bye-bye.